I'd just like to briefly talk about Nonlinearity in Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. This novel is famous for its non-linear structure, from the way the chronology of the text has been broken up and shuffled around, so that while we do get the life story of Billy Pilgrim from pretty much his early childhood, some stories from his experiences pre-World War II, his experiences in World War II and after World War II, right up to his death in 1976. This story is not told in a linear fashion. The story is chopped up into pieces and shuffled around. So we have jumps between these periods of Billy's life. In fact, on page 180 of this version of the novel, through page 182, deals with Billy Pilgrim's death. He says, "I, Billy Pilgrim, will die, have died, and always will die on February the 13th, 1976. And indeed, he is killed in 1976. On page 182 it says, "So Billy experiences death for a while. It is simply violet light and a hum. There isn't anybody else there. Not even Billy Pilgrim is there." And you get your little famous little dots there, dot, 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 and there's a jump in time. Then he swings back into life again, all the way back to an hour after his life was threatened by Lazaro in 1945. So here, Billy moves back to the POW camp 31 years earlier, and you see this massive jump from actually post-death back to 31 years earlier. Now, why is this novel written this way? Or another way of asking that question is, maybe a better question is, what effect does this non-linear narrative have on us, the readers? Well, one thing that's been said before, and I'll say it again, is that it emphasizes the confusion of Billy Pilgrim in the novel, and he represents us perhaps, that our lives and our deaths seem very random and confusing, just in the same way the jumps in the novel seem confusing to Billy and disorienting. That's how we experience life, right? Somewhat. So maybe some people suggest that these jumps that seem to be happening are a symptom of Billy Pilgrim's post-traumatic stress disorder from his experiences in World War II, although he doesn't see things that way. The other interpretation, of course, is that the novel has a fatalistic, deterministic viewpoint. One of the Tralfamadorians says that free will is just an illusion, and he's never encountered free will like any species that believe in free will, only on Earth. And this fairy tale of free will is something the Tralfamadorian seems to laugh at, and the idea of free will arguably is rejected in this novel as well. So, because the end is known, all the time leading up to the end is kind of irrelevant, maybe pointless, can be chopped up and diced up and moved around, and it doesn't really change anything. By jumping ahead, we can see that what the end will be. Billy Pilgrim sees what his end will be. He will be, what does he say? I died, I will die, and I have always died in 1976. He sees his end, and so all the time leading up to that, chopped up as it is, kind of doesn't really matter. It's all leading to one point that cannot be avoided. The novel itself predicts how it will end. It says it will finish with the onomatopoeia of the bird saying poo-dee-weet, and that's indeed how it ends. And so the ending of the novel is preordained, seemingly unavoidable. It predicts that that's how it will end. It ends that way, No matter how you read it, that's always going to be the finish. In fact, even the universe itself, according to this novel, has a set ending that cannot be avoided. That when the Tralfamadorians are experimenting with a ray gun, they accidentally blow up the whole universe. That's the end of it. And there's nothing that can be done to avoid that. This is just, of course, a playful sort of representation of the idea of the way that fate and destiny are out of our hands, perhaps, maybe, in our own lives, in the wider world. Things are always going to happen the way they're going to happen, even to the hyperbolic extent that the way the universe is going to end has already been decided, according to this novel. So those are two ways that non-linearity work in this text. They might emphasize confusion. Was three ways, really. They might be a symptom of the trauma of war, playing havoc with Billy Pilgrim's mind, showing us how horrible war is. They can also be, the non-linearity can also be interpreted as really conveying a sense of how fate is being determined, that we are helpless, that we might have the illusion of free will, but it doesn't really exist. The Tralfamadorians would laugh at us if we suggested. Now, there are probably many other effects the non-linearity of the novel have on us. I've just given three pretty famous interpretations, but I encourage you to think of other ways that non-linearity works on the audience as they read this book.